Howdy. I noticed recently that it's been about a year or so since I started actively making things in Blender, so I figured why not make an anniversary video of sorts. A bit of backstory: I graduated from college at the end of 2019. I was planning on going into food microbiology, but then the pandemic thing happened and it made me question life, like I think a lot of people questioned life at that time. Since I had plenty of time to think during the pandemic, I decided to get back in touch with the art side of things, starting with 2D digital art. I only did that, I did it very briefly, until I remembered that 3D digital art was the thing. I would already spend an unhealthy amount of time in character creation systems in games like Phantasy Star Online 2, or Black Desert, or Divinity. Even though Divinity doesn't really have that complex of a character creation, I would still spend a lot of time. I figured why not take it a step further and try to get into Blender again. I say again because I tried like a Blender tutorial or two in the past, but I'd like lose focus part of the way through, and then drop Blender for like several months, and then repeat the process. I do have a few pictures from the projects I did during that time, the pre-serious era, which is technically 2020. I didn't really get serious until 2021, you know, a year ago. So the first one I did was the classic donut video. I didn't get past the donut part where you animate the cup or whatever. I got bored. I did make them in pastel and Halloween colors because, as you will likely see, I like cute things, but I'm also somehow still perpetually stuck in my edgy teen phase. A few months later, I decided to make a low poly car for my dad's birthday. I don't really know anything about cars at all, but I know that he likes them a lot, so I did my best. I actually finished this one because it was for someone and not just me randomly doing a tutorial. A few more months later, I started the sword tutorial that may or may not also be a fairly popular beginner one. I didn't finish that one either. Once again, I got distracted and bored. At this point, I was starting to think that perhaps I'm just not a tutorial kind of person, and decided to just try making one of my OCs by myself and just look up things whenever I get stuck. So, yeah. This method of just looking up stuff as I went worked pretty well, as I actually ended up staying really focused on the project for either several days or weeks. I don't remember how long. On one hand, I actually finished a project for once, but on the other, I may have lost a few points in sanity from lack of sleep, which it's not healthy. Don't do that. The part I struggled with the most on this particular project was honestly weight painting. I was having a lot of issues with the sleeves, and it didn't help that I didn't know that having a very high poly count would make everything take like 10 seconds to process when I was trying to pose and stuff. It was a mess. I also further tortured myself by making 4 seasonal variations for whatever reason. First project things. This project made me realize that I had a lot more motivation to complete projects if I made up a fun thing to work on first and then looked up information as I needed it, because this was a lot more engaging than just following along step by step with a regular tutorial. There was also the additional motivation of getting all of these character ideas out of my brain. Unfortunately, I hit a sort of detour when I found out that VTubers were a thing. Since I don't like the concept of being on camera, but also feel like voice only is not as fun, a cute character stand-in seemed like a good compromise. But it was unexpectedly difficult for me to figure out a good mascot, if you will, for my channel myself. I think of new characters all the time, like on a weekly basis, honestly. But when it came to making one for me specifically, I got super indecisive about it for apparently 6 months. On one hand, I wish I didn't spend so much time on this because I could have been, well, on YouTube a lot sooner. But on the other, it's not like I didn't learn stuff in the process, so I guess that's fine. Also, this model is sufficiently cute in my opinion. The first model concept I came up with was a mummy cat because on all levels except physical, I am a cat. And zombies and mummies are just cool. From this, I mostly just learned about making visemes, which I disliked greatly, and texturing with the multi-res modifier and texture mask. I also learned how to set up VRMs in Unity, but that's not really Blender related. I ended up not using this model though because my life is an eternal struggle between my inner edgy self and my kawaii weeb self, as I mentioned earlier, so I decided to make something more cute and less edgy. This time I came up with a plant girl because I like plants and fantasy plant races in general. That's a lot cuter than a mummy. The weight painting for this dress is all manner of busted, but I wasn't really planning on showing that part of the model anyway, so I just left it as it was. I ended up scrapping this one though because she felt like more of her own character than a representation of myself at some point, so yeah, back to the drawing board. On this third attempt, I wanted to combine my desire for edge with my lust for cuteness, which resulted in what I call Sotheby 1.0, because Shadow Entity wearing an angel costume just doesn't roll off the tongue as well. I actually still have the VRM for this model, although it's a weird pink version. I didn't keep this one because honestly it feels a bit too cartoony for me, but I did reuse this concept again in the next one. Which leads us to Sotheby 2.0. As you can see, it is the same concept, but more humanoid. It was at this point where I was starting to feel like I had a pretty good grasp on Blender. Not like I'm a pro at Blender or anything, but just that I could visualize more possible things that I could learn how to do in the future, if that makes any sense. I was also getting very tired of making VRMs at this point, so I was actually gonna stick with this model. I even made like YouTube channel stuff for it, like the icon and the background and stuff. I just couldn't really pick a color. As you can see, I have two rendered pictures posted right there. But for some reason, the only model I have is this blue one. I don't know. While I was trying to figure that out, I was like, I kind of feel like making a sheep girl just for fun. Not as an avatar or anything. Ha, 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 ha. Unfortunately, Sheep Girl actually did become Sotheby 3.0 because I have a problem. But also because I kind of realized that I wanted a bit more of a mascot than a humanoid character like Sotheby 2.0. And then 3.0 became 3.1, aka Cat Sotheby. Once I finished Cat Sotheby, I felt like the Lolita dress was too intense, for me at least. And I also really wanted to incorporate more aspects of my namesake, Sotheby, and this resulted in the birth of Sotheby 3.2, aka Final B. Finally, free of the VTuber curse I'd put on myself, I could actually work on that character I started in the midst of all that, Mr. Wolfman. Unfortunately, after working on him for a couple more weeks, I got to this point that you can see on screen and I couldn't decide where to go with his outfit, so I just stopped working on him. Poor guy. Since starting this channel, the only thing I've worked on that hasn't been posted is this set of pet characters for a now scrapped game concept. I only got to make one armor and weapon set, and then one variation of each pet category. I did make a little pumpkin cat for Halloween last year, and I 3D printed and painted him. The other two pumpkins are not by me, by the way. Anyway, I plan on using this little guy in the future, so keep an eye out if you want to. If you don't. That's it for my first-ish year of Blender. I would make one next year, but that might be kind of redundant since I plan on uploading most things now. See you later, I guess.